Do you mind talking a bit about Julie and the Phantoms? Everyone has obsessions, especially kids. Space, princesses, horses, whatever. Mine, when I was around 10, was Julie and the Phantoms.
Oh, Sophia, how is that possible? Julie and the Phantoms was released in 2020. You don't look like a 10-year-old.
Thank you for asking, Random Sock. You see, I wasn't talking about that Julie and the Phantoms. Created by Nickelodeon in Brazil in 2011, Julie and Los Fantasmas was wonderful. It followed the life of this awkward teen named Julie while she was dealing with normal high school stuff, grades, bullies, infiltrating your crush's house to retrieve your phone that you left in his backpack when you were stalking him so he doesn't know that you were stalking him. Normal stuff. And at the time, I was an awkward teen, so sign me up. But wait, there's more? A ghost band that makes bomb songs that I still unironically listen to this day because they're just that good. Consider my 10-year-old mind officially blown. Also, I fully blame this show for why I find guys wearing eyeliner so attractive to this day. It's honestly a shame how this show only aired in a couple of South American countries and in Italy, but I was just glad to be one of the lucky ones who had witnessed it. This until I was scrolling through TikTok and on my For You page started popping up some videos about Julie and the Phantoms. Just not the right one. Was I being transported in an alternative dimension where Julie and the Phantom is a TV show from the United States where no one wears eyeliner? The answer, I'm afraid, is yes. But why? I never asked for it, and I'm for sure the target audience. I mean, I might be 19-year-old and this is a show mostly done for kids, but I enjoyed the original one, so only I could really appreciate a remake. This new show was probably done just to anger me and all the people who totally care about the 10-year-old show, transmitted in a very selected number of countries. So I waited for the other Julie and Los Fantasmas fan to rise up and riot. But for some reason they never did. No one even seemed to acknowledge the original show, and I was starting to lose hope until it happened.
Is a remake of a Brazilian series that I believe aired on Nickelodeon. I actually went and watched a few episodes because I found the Spanish dub on YouTube, and so I think I made it to like episode 5 before calling it quits. I just personally didn't really like it.
I respected Katie Loves Disney. I like their videos, but no matter how nice, funny, or generally wonderful she is, I will never forgive her for criticizing my favorite show without even asking its fans' opinion.
Actually, in the video she asked people if she should keep watching it.
That's not the point. The point is that I'm tired of watching everyone destroy Julie and Los Fantasmas. So there you go. I'm doing a whole video on why Julie and the Phantom is the worst remake in TV history. First of all, why even call it Julie and the Phantoms when you're gonna change the whole thing? They didn't even keep the original names. Luke? You mean Daniel? Reggie? Maybe you're referring to Martin. Alex? I only know... Actually, I forget Felix's name quite often, and Alex just sounds better. But they changed Bia to Flynn, and that's bad. And besides that, I guess they changed Nicholas to Nick, but who cares about him, honestly. However, I'm not gonna forgive them for the clothes. The original Ghosts were supposed to have lived in the 80s, and their band was heavily inspired by The Cure. I'm not gonna say that their costumes are 100% accurate, especially because I don't know anything about vintage clothes, but you can kind of see the resemblance, for example with the shirts, Martin's tie, and the makeup. The only thing I couldn't really find a reference of was Felix's vest, but according to Wikipedia, vest and Hawaiian shirts similar to the one he's wearing were kind of popular in the mid-80s. So even if the costumes aren't 100% accurate, they kind of resemble the time period in which the ghosts were supposed to have lived. I can say the same for the Sunset Curves. Come on, they're literally dressed up as TikTokers, which would be fine if they weren't a band from the 90s. No one was that fashionable in the 90s, get your facts right. Talking about clothes, why in the remake the ghosts always change their clothes? It is well known by anyone who likes ghosts that in the afterlife you get stuck with what you were wearing at the moment of your death. For example, if I die now, I would look like this forever. I'm not sure it's a good thing.
Ghosts are made of air, so who cares? They can take any form they want, and that includes changing their clothes.
That still wouldn't make any sense, because there's one scene where you see Luke taking a bag of clothes that are part of the real material world and putting one of the shirts on, and people still don't see a floating shirt when he's around. How did the t-shirt become invisible, Luke? How? Did I lose way too much sleep thinking about that scene alone? Probably, but the point is that nothing makes sense. And the fact that they can summon their instruments from thin air is just stupid. I know they explain it because their souls are linked to their instruments or something like that, but I don't care. It's stupid. Also, I miss the eyeliner. Give the ghost eyeliner, you cowards!
I mean, this job maybe isn't perfect, but also it doesn't seem that bad.
It is. It's just that I haven't rewatched Juliana's Phantasmas in a couple of years, so I can't really show you how awful in comparison the new one is. Just give me the time to rewatch the original to refresh my memory, and I'll be back to tear down the remake. Okay, maybe Juliana's Phantasmas wasn't the masterpiece I remembered, and I'm not talking only about the crappy special effects. I mean, it was 2011, also their budget was probably way lower than the one given to Julian the Phantoms, but there's just so much more that just doesn't work with this show. One of the reasons why the remake is maybe, perhaps, just a tiny bit better than the original is, how to put it, the wokeness.
Get woke, these are sensitive times.
Julian the Phantoms is a quite inclusive show. It has characters from different ethnicity, and there's a gay couple that is not just there in the background, but is actively part of the storyline. I wish I didn't have to praise a show for doing like the bare minimum and including characters that are not white, straight and cis, but unfortunately representation is hard to come by, especially in kids media. Julian the Phantoms understood how important representation is, and at least in my opinion, it did a pretty good job in portraying a diverse cast of characters. The same, I'm afraid, can't really be said for the Brazilian version of the show. There, we don't really get a lot of diversity. We only have one Asian character named Shizuko, and she's not a good example of representation, like, at all. She's one of Julie's friends and classmates, and their personality is just stereotypical smart Asian girl. For example, there's these episodes where the ghost helped Julie cheat her way out of some exams, making her the best student of the class, and Shizuko's reaction to that is just a complete mental breakdown because her only dream in life is being the smartest of the class. I don't have time to unpack all that, but not cool, like at all. Also, there's this one episode where one of the ghosts, Martin, wants to eat on Shizuko, and that would be fine if his only reasoning wasn't I've never been with a Japanese girl. At the end, Shizuko snubs him, but at the same time the show never addresses why Martin's behavior is wrong. It's true that 10 years ago these kind of topics weren't really addressed, especially in shows made for kids. But at the same time, I don't think that justifies this show for presenting racial stereotypes as okay to impressionable kids. Yikes! Changing topics, the new Julian the Phantoms has way better lines than the original one, and trust me, it pains me to say this. I'm not saying that the Brazilian version wasn't funny. I mean, I laughed at a lot of the jokes, but first of all, I'm well known for finding bad jokes way more funny than they actually are. Second, I laughed at a lot of things that I'm pretty sure I wasn't supposed to laugh at. But yeah, even for me, for every two good jokes, there was at least one that fell completely flat. The remake, on the other hand, is truly hilarious. There were still some awkward jokes, but the majority of them were great. Alex was by far the funniest. I like Alex, as you can tell, but pretty much everyone had their moments. However, I feel like in the original, the humor is not the only thing making some of the conversations between characters feel awkward. Honestly, some of the dialogue is just badly written. I don't speak Portuguese, so I was only able to see the Italian dubbed version, so I'm gonna give this show the benefit of the doubt. Maybe some of the lines were just badly translated, but I can only criticize what I saw, and I saw some characters that at times talked like aliens undercover, and with that I mean Nicholas. Nicholas should be portrayed as the perfect guy for Julie, but no one likes him because he has like the most boring and awkward lines in the whole show. When he's on screen, you don't cheer for him. You just wonder when he's gonna shut up and leave, which is not great for the main love interest.
Maybe you find the dialogue bad because you don't like the character and not the other way around.
The problem is that I also don't like some of the lines given to Daniel, which is Luke's counterpart in the original, and I love his character, like, way too much. Don't get me wrong, Daniel's lines are way better than Nicholas, but there are times when it just sounds like a 13-year-old edgelord. And you start remembering that all this was written by a middle-aged man that thinks that's how cool kids talk, which is not great. I'm not saying that the remake has the most realistic lines, but at the same time they feel less awkward. Also, Nick is boring, but I don't hate him, which is an improvement, I guess. Another reason why Julian the Phantoms has just better writing than the original is the structure. Julian's Phantasma's structure is just a mess, and I'm being nice here. It takes an eternity for the story truly to start. In the remake, the beginning is quite simple. In the first episode, Julie meets the ghost. In the second episode, they play for the first time, and by the end of the third episode, they are officially a band. The characters have enough time to develop a convincing relationship between each other, but at the same time, the band is formed quickly enough not to bore the viewer, allowing the story to freely move forward from there. In Julianos Phantasmas, it takes 5 episodes for the band to truly form. 5 20-minute long episodes. And why does it take so long? Oh, to watch Julie create their science project for a whole episode. Great.
So it takes a while to get to the point. It's not a big deal.
It is actually, considering that even I, that know I love this show, struggled a bit at the beginning because it was so slow. The remake has actually a quite strong development. The ghosts find a weird, cultish, 20s-inspired ghost club. Okay, and their Caleb curses them with the weird, magic, soul-sucking stamps. I'm personally not the biggest fan of the stamps. I find them quite silly, but it's a show about a ghost band, so maybe I'm the silly one. Anyway, good or bad, the stamps actually do a pretty good job in showing how the situation escalates, hurting the protagonist more and more as Caleb becomes more and more dangerous. It gives a very good structure to the show, reminding the viewer where the story is going and what the stakes are. Caleb himself is a pretty good villain, and I'm not saying that just because he has a very cool hat. He is presented as this serious and difficult to overcome obstacles for the ghost. He is powerful, scary, and probably drowns puppies for fun. So Julian the Phantom is defined by this very strong enemy to defeat, and the whole plot is built towards reaching that point. Julianos Phantasmas is a bit more episodic than the new version, which is not bad, but it means that the evolution of the storyline is less straightforward considering how many filler episodes there are. A lot of great TV shows have this structure, however, to make it work, it is usually important not to lose track of the main story arc, even through all the less relevant episodes. So for example, in Gravity Falls, you can have as many useless episodes talking about gnomes and ghosts, but there's also a continuous and gradual evolution of the main storyline dealing with Bill Cipher and his attempts to rule the world. In Julie, the main villain should be Demetrius, and the main storyline should be defeating him. Demetrius is the chief of the Spectre Police, which is this organization that tries to avoid interactions between humans and ghosts. It makes perfect sense for him to be the main obstacles to the band, considering that Julian the Phantoms want to perform in front of people and be known for their music, and they can't do that until Demetrius is around. Also, Demetrius is scary. I mean, he doesn't look scary, but we are told that he entrapped the main 3 ghosts in a vinyl for years when they first broke the rules. Also, we saw him psychologically torture Daniel until he gave up on his dreams, and he tried to strangle Julie to death.
That's pretty scary if you ask me.
Exactly, Demetrius is a great villain. At least it would have been if the writers didn't ruin everything by adding halfway through the season a evil scientist who wants to rule over the ghost. Honestly, the idea is not too bad. I mean, it's silly, but like in a good way. It's interesting and kids love evil scientists, or at least I did. The problem is that this enemy is presented as even more powerful than Demetrius, but for some reason it's like defeated after just 2 episodes. After that, another couple of evil guys were written in the story, like a teenage boy who is really inappropriate. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's kind of horrifying, but like if you compare it to the ghost police or evil scientist, it's not the worst. To solve this problem, they kind of brought back the mattress again, but I mean, it's not scary anymore. It's kind of pathetic considering that we saw him cry the whole time the evil scientist was around. But honestly, who cares? He's defeated like 4 episodes before the ending. He swears he's gonna come back and get his revenge, but like, spoiler alert, it never does. It's just gone. And from then on, the only conflict is a love triangle. Doesn't make any sense. It's like the writers kept getting bored and couldn't stick to just one storyline, so they created this messy bundle of unresolved conflict that stems from nothing and goes nowhere. And now, let's talk about the worst thing in Julian Los Fantasmas, the ending. As a kid, I was furious about the ending, and I'm not exaggerating. I always blamed it on the fact that Julie ends up choosing Nicholas over Daniel. I can't state enough how in love with Daniel I was. But watching it now, as objectively as I can, the ending is just bad and I'm still mad about it. The love triangle between Julie, Nicholas and Daniel was well fleshed out throughout the show, so it doesn't come as a surprise that in the final episode Julie has to choose between her 2 crushes. But somehow even that feels rushed. So quick summary, Daniel threatened Nicholas to kill him if he spoke to Julie ever again, and the last episode starts with him explaining why he did so. His excuse is that he has never allowed himself to love someone before Julie, and now he can't bear the idea of letting her go so easily. That's not really a good excuse for traumatizing someone for life, but at the same time it gives us an idea of how much Daniel loves Julie. Not in a healthy way, but loves her nonetheless. Let's jump from that to the end of the episode. Julie has chosen Nicholas over Daniel, who is now sadly playing his guitar in the garage. Julie finds him and asks him to be friends despite everything that happens, and Daniel agrees and they hug. It's nice, right? Wrong, because it doesn't make any sense when it comes to Daniel's story arc. At the beginning of the series, he was this sarcastic ghost who suppressed all these feelings. Falling in love with Julie, even if it was mostly one-sided, allowed him to open up and discover that feelings are not something to be ashamed by or afraid of. However, when he asserts that he's completely fine with just being friends with Julie, just a couple of hours after saying that he couldn't even bear the idea of not being in a relationship with her, it just sounds fake, as if he's still suppressing his feelings. It seems like he didn't learn anything during the series. I'm not saying that they should end up together or the ending is bad, considering that, especially at the end, like their relationship was honestly not the healthiest. But it would have been nice having at least a conversation between the two where they discuss what happened, acknowledge it and come to terms with it. Instead, we only got Julie hugging Daniel, thinking she saved their friendship, while he just sadly stares at her, not even remotely over her. It's just sad and honestly really disappointing. Like, you watch 27 episodes and that's the ending? One where they couldn't even wrap up the story arc of one of the main and most loved characters. In the remake, when the ghosts survive Caleb's curse, the victory feels earned and you want to cheer for them. In the original one, at the end, you're just left wondering, is that it? It's not a surprise that like everyone in that comment section is just complaining about what happened. Also, I find it funny how many fanfictions there are about this random and obscure show, and I'm 99% sure that most of them, if not all, were created out of bitterness for the ending, and I know that because I wrote my alternative ending at the time. And honestly, those fanfictions could be considered more emotionally fulfilling than the original thing, despite all the spelling mistakes. That's how bad the ending is. Anyway, I got lost and re-ate that episode. Going back to why the remake is good and not talking only about how the original is not the best. I actually enjoyed a lot of elements that were added in the new show and were not present in the Brazilian one. For example, Trevor's character. In Julian Los Fantasmas there was a band member who survived, but it was pretty much useless. His only function was to explain how the ghost died. They tried to copy the famous Beatles album cover and got hit by a bus in the process. Still hilarious, still love it. Anyway, after saying that, it just disappears and the story moves on. In the remake they took the same concept, but did something more interesting with it. The surviving band member here is called Trevor, and he became a famous rock star because he stole some of the songs from Sunset Curves. This shows how the band actually had a chance to make it if they just had survived the deadly hot dog. And it's honestly really sad. But the reason why I like what the writers did with Trevor's character can be seen in The Other Side of Hollywood. At the beginning of the episode, the ghosts are trying to find a way to get revenge over Trevor for the stolen songs, which makes perfect sense, but it also shows how they are still stuck in the past. When at the end of the episode they are ready to give up on the revenge plan, it's clear that they are ready to close that chapter of their lives and start a new one with Julie. Consequently, their new band doesn't just seem like it's Sunset Curves, but with a new singer. It's something new. It's Julie and the Phantoms. Also, I love Trevor's face when he sees his dead ex-band members performing live in front of him. It's hilarious and I will never not find that funny. Something else that the new series added is the ghost backstory. In the original, we didn't really know much about Daniel, Felix and Martin. We just knew they were a band trying to make it in the music industry, mostly failing. Also, we knew that Daniel plays air guitar for some reason. In the new version, the ghosts talk multiple times about their past lives, and at the beginning of the series, they even try to look for their parents, which is something so cute and sincere. It makes them feel like real people. I mean, they're still teenagers who found themselves in this terrible and awful situation, so it makes sense for them to look for the people they care about. However, by far the best backstory was the one written for Luke. I won't say I cried for Unsaid Emily, but I cried for Unsaid Emily a lot. It's just a really heartfelt subplot that explains so much about Luke's character. Now it not only seems more authentic, but after Unsaid Emily, the viewer really understands why he likes music so much and why he wants to succeed so badly, which is pretty important in a show about music. Finally, including the ghost backstories is perfect for exploring the idea of grief. In the original show, death wasn't something too deep. I mean, sometimes Martin, Daniel and Felix complained about not being alive, especially Daniel, considering the whole I can't date Julie thing. But besides that, they mostly had fun in the afterlife, and they even managed to do some alive stuff. For example, learning how to drive a car or getting a job. In the remake, however, grief and death are the main topics of the show. They notoriously aren't easy topics to deal with, especially when it comes to series made for kids, but here it's done in such a simple and heartfelt way that is truly admirable. I must admit it, at the beginning I thought the whole dead mom thing was something sad just to sound deep without truly being it, but I was wrong. It's not something quickly mentioned once to get a tear or two from the viewer and then never mentioned again. It's something present in every single aspect of the show. For example, when Julie's family sets the table for dinner also for the mother, even though she's not there. Also, I liked how the pain of losing someone is not really hidden. It's easy to have your characters just state that they are sad because someone died, but here you see them cry multiple times because they miss someone that they will never be able to hug again. And you feel for them, and you start remembering when you felt in a similar way, and before you know it, you're crying to a show about a ghost band.
So, does that mean you hate the original?
I don't. Juliana's Phantasmas might not be perfect, like, not at all, but there were still a lot of good things that came out of it. One of them being the world building. Because there are so many filler episodes, there is so much more time to expand on the world in which Julie lives in. So we get to know her friends, family, classmates, their personalities, their stories. And this, according to me, is not only more interesting, but also helps the viewer feel more involved with the story. The remake mostly sticks with a set cast of characters, which is fine. Introducing a lot of useless secondary characters can be quite confusing, and you would lose a lot of time otherwise used to flesh out more the main characters. However, this show seems to expand only on Julie, Reggie, Alex, and Luke. The other characters are just there. For example, Flynn is a quite one-dimensional character, like she has nothing too interesting going on for her. She appears when she's needed and then just disappears, which is fine, she's not the protagonist, but at the same time is a waste of a really cool character. In the Brazilian version, Julie's best friend Bia was actually more fleshed out. She was still mostly there to help the protagonist, but she was also part of some subplots that had nothing to do with Julie, giving us the chance to get to know her a bit better as an individual. Also, she was able to see the ghost as well. I know Evelyn can't do the same, the ghost lore is quite different in the two shows. However, I wish she could. It's so much more interesting having the protagonist's best friend actually interacting with the band, joking around with them, instead of just standing there awkwardly, not knowing what is happening around you while the others are having the time of their lives. Talking about ghosts, in the original show we actually get to know a lot about their world, which is so much fun. We get to know that ghosts are responsible for Wi-Fi problems, which means that my house is extremely haunted. We get to meet a bunch of ghosts, like the toilet spectre, which is hilarious. We are introduced to the spectre police, and we visit a karaoke where Elvis Presley is singing. It's honestly all quite silly, but it's so much fun. In the remake, beside Alex, Luke, and Reggie, there are just two other ghosts. And I mean, there's the Ghost Club, which was so entertaining. I loved that part. But besides that, we don't really get to know a lot about that world, which is a shame. And now it's time to address the three main ghosts. I actually really enjoyed what the writers did with Alex and Reggie. They are quite similar to the original characters they are based on, but like they exaggerated their personalities, which in my opinion really works. It's really entertaining to watch. But I don't like too much what they did with Luke. It could be just because I'm so attached to the character he's based on, but hear me out. Alex is the sweet and energetic one, Reggie is the flirty and energetic one, and Luke is the cool and energetic one. In my opinion, they are all way too similar personality-wise. There are scenes where you could literally swap Reggie's lines with Luke's, and I wouldn't notice just because they sound so similar. The original show solved that problem by making Martin and Felix the optimistic characters, while Daniel is the sarcastic and pessimistic one. This contrast of personalities creates interesting situations that wouldn't occur otherwise, like when Daniel is too much of a drama queen to share the stage with Julie. In the remake, the three ghosts basically agree on everything, which is fine, but I still think that as sassy ghost was still more entertaining to watch. Also, talking about Daniel, I wholeheartedly believe that his relationship with Julie was built in a better way than Luke's relationship with Julie. And before you come at me because I disrespected your ship, I don't mean to say that their relationship itself is better. In the end, Julie and Daniel didn't end up together, something that still brings me so much pain. But the thing is that in the remake, Luke and Julie don't spend too much time alone together. Like, they have the really cute moments, but at the same time we're never shown the most important moments in their relationship, when they write music together. Julie tells Flynn multiple times that that's how she and Luke got to know each other and eventually fell in love. But we never see it. I know that in TV you don't have to show everything, that would be quite boring, but because of the importance given to these writing sessions, I'm honestly disappointed that they did nothing with them. Not even a montage. I love a good montage. Julie and Daniel's relationship, at least in my opinion, is better showcased. Like, we get episodes where nothing happens plot-wise, but the two just go on very cute dates. They talk, they have fun, they get to know each other, and I think that's why a lot of people rooted for them, even though it was clear that Daniel and Julie were never gonna be a thing. Because they saw their relationship form, and the two slowly falling in love with each other. But then Julie chose Nicholas and the two didn't have any chemistry, so maybe I don't know anything. My final proof for why the original Julie and the Phantoms wasn't a complete mess, but only half of it, is actually quite dumb. Between the over-the-top comedy and the edgy lines, there were actually some really good and heartfelt moments. For example, the upper-mentioned dates between Julie and Daniel, or when Julie fails an exam and the ghost write her a song about Brazilian literature to help her study. It was a terrible ripoff of that Hannah Montana episode, but that's not the point. Or there was also when Julie and Bea had a fight. In the remake, there's also an episode where the two best friends fight, but even though the resolution there is really cute and heartfelt, the fight itself was more comedic, which is not bad. It was really fun to watch. But in the original show, it was really personal and real. It actually reminded me a lot of how fights with my best friend felt like in middle school. I couldn't even tell you if these scenes are good or not. I can only say that when I was rewatching the series to write this video, this type of scenes always made me smile. Even when I was having a really bad day, they brought back really good memories and made me happy and hopeful for the next day. And I think that's why I still love this show. I don't know if the people who created this series cared about it. I sure hope they did, but even if they didn't, they ended up creating something that means so much to me and that brings me so much joy, despite and sometimes even because of its flaws.
So you like both shows, good to know. But what's the point of this video?
The point is that the beginning of the video was true. I mean, I was acting probably really badly, but when I first heard that my favorite kids show was getting a remake, I was actually really mad and ready to destroy it with my big brain, which, okay. Even when I had watched the whole thing in like 2 or 3 days, cried like a baby for Unsaid Emily, and listened pretty frequently to the soundtrack on Spotify, I still kept complaining about it, constantly. And yeah, it's not a perfect show, but I wasn't criticizing it in good faith. I just didn't want to admit it was good. I remember I even went to see what the actor who played Daniel thought about it, and I was ready to see him destroy the thing. But he didn't. He had this video, I think on his Instagram, where he complimented the cast of the remake, saying he enjoyed it, and even asking for a second season. I couldn't believe it. I mean, Julie and Los Fantasmas was a big part of my childhood, but it was probably an even bigger part in this man's life. And he was able to enjoy the remake, appreciating it for what it was, while I couldn't. I had to reconsider a couple of my choices, and to do so, I had to go back to the glorious year of 2018, when thousands of grown men wept looking at their childhood torn to shreds by She-Ra, the remake. Oh no, she's now sexy, and it's woke.
Woke. Yeah, that's a cool word.
At the time, people lost their minds, and with people, I mean men in their 50s who had no life whatsoever. I remember looking at that mess and not caring at all, because I didn't have Netflix at the time, so I couldn't watch the new She-Ra, and at the same time I had never watched the old one, so I just didn't care. But when I finally watched the remake, I honestly enjoyed it a lot. The story was fantastic, the animation was great, and it was honestly really funny. And out of curiosity, I also ended up watching a couple of scenes from the original show and just...
Oh, let me go!
Don't worry, Adora. I'll save you.
But I don't want...
Quick, into the cottage.
Comparing those poorly animated scenes created just to sell toys to the wonderful and heartwarming tale that is the remake is honestly really funny to me. I wonder how those 50-year-old men could be so blind and simply not get that the remake was objectively better than the original show. And now look at me, I'm the 50-year-old man, blinded by the terrible and wonderful thing that is nostalgia. I ignore the fact that Julie and the Phantom is objectively a really good show just because I couldn't let go of the original. In my defense, I wasn't really expecting a remake to come out of the blue, but maybe it's my fault. I haven't been that active on the Julianos Fantasmas Italian blog in a while. It's kind of alarming how it never crossed my mind that having a remake didn't mean losing the original show. It's still there. I can watch it whenever I want, and I can like equally buff versions. Also, I have to keep in mind that this show simply wasn't made for me. It doesn't mean that adults can't enjoy kids media. I personally watch a lot of cartoons or kids shows, and it doesn't mean that this type of content shouldn't be criticized just because it's for kids. I just want to say that adults, me included, shouldn't really complain for finding some things explicitly made for kids silly or boring. They are not made to entertain us. They are made to entertain kids. For example, personally, I don't like too much the ending of Julie and the Phantoms when they are saved by what appears to be the power of love. I thought it was a bit silly and cheesy, but does that matter? Not really. It was cool to watch and the intended audience seemed to like it. So, who cares? I'm just really disappointed in myself for trying to point out that, oh, the band appears on stage and people don't question it. That doesn't make any sense. It's not supposed to make sense, and I was just too blinded by resentment to accept that. So yeah, this whole video was just made to apologize to this really cool show for judging it so quickly, so harshly. I'm just happy that a new generation has now the chance to experience what I enjoyed when I was 10. I'm happy to see people ship Luke and Julie. I'm even happy to see people hate on Nick just because I really don't like that character and I will hate him in every single incarnation he will ever get. And yeah, I'm actually really excited for a second season. I just hope that this time the ending will be just a bit better than the original because my heart honestly can't take it. And that's enough of me rambling about TV shows. For the 2 people who watched this, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if we don't see each other ever again, I hope you have a great rest of your lives. Bye!